Good morning, my name's Kim Horton. I'm your reporter at Gloucestershire Live, and I'm here to have a tour around Gloucester Prison. So if I just swing this camera around, this is Julian Brunt. Say hello, Julian.
Good afternoon all.
What are we going to be doing today?
I'm going to show you around Gloucester Prison. I served here for 25 years, Kim. I believe I've got vast geographical knowledge of the jail and its workings, and you and I are going to have a good look around Gloucester Prison today.
Go on then, show me the way.
Certainly. This area here is where every prisoner starts his journey into jail. We've got the vehicle lot behind us. All our prisoners who come in from the Crown Courts or the Magistrates' Courts come through the vehicle lot there, are parked in this area here, and go into what's an area what's called our reception department. That's where they're processed, given a meal, prison clothing taken from them, mental health issues discussed,
right,
allocated a cell, and from this area in reception they are then allocated a cell. Exactly the same happens when our prisoners, exactly the opposite happens when our prisoners go to court. They meet in this area here called reception, and they're loaded onto the various vehicles and are taken off to the courts each morning through the vehicle lot. So this is where our prisoner starts his first day in Gloucester Prison and maybe ends his last day in Gloucester Prison.
Okay, where are we going to now?
We're going to have a look around the grounds before we go in and have a look at the cells. First place I'm going to take you to is the prison exercise yard. Just in front of us.
Okay.
You cannot deny a prisoner to a right to hour's exercise a day. Regardless of his behaviour, he's entitled to an hour's exercise a day. A few years ago, we used to have a terminology called inclement weather, where we decided about 5 or 10 minutes before exercise whether it should take place. Is it raining? Is it snowing? Is it an icy surface?
Yeah.
And we could decide whether exercise took place or not. In more recent times, it is a right of a prisoner, regardless of the weather conditions, that he is entitled to an hour's exercise. That exercise in Gloucester Prison would take place out in this ground here, affectionately known as the cage for obvious reasons. We would not man the inside of the exercise yard. We position ourselves out the other side of the cage. You may be able to see the various seats. I've put one over there. You might be able to sit over there, which is right next to the laundry shop, which is a very warm place to be. Our prison roll here at Gloucester was always about 300 prisoners, but we would not allow 300 prisoners out here in one stint, in one hourly session. That would be a security breach. We broke it up into wings. Over the years, for many years, A and B exercised together, and then later in the day, C wing exercised. Okay, so this is where exercise took place in Gloucester Prison.
Right, where are we going now?
We're just going to walk past the Gymnasium, formerly one of my favourite parts of the jail. This is where our prisoners use the facilities. We're able to train. We're looking at the former sports hall. I can still see where the markings of the badminton court over there. To your left was the weights room, and over in the right-hand corner, the two doors is where our prisoners changed and showered after the completion of any physical activity.
Okay.
If you move around and look at the exercise yard again, you will see on the exercise yard that we've got basketball courts, netting still standing. That is because when exercise wasn't taking place, and on dry days, the exercise yard doubled up for sports facilities. The most common game, five-a-side football. Prisoners like playing French cricket out there. I've seen circuit training take place out there. Prisoners running around the outside of the exercise yard, lifting weights and doing sprint shuttles. So it doubled up is another tool for the gymnasium.
When did the prison shut?
The prison shut January the 9th. Well, it was announced January the 9th, 2013, and our last operational day after 220 years was March 31st, 2013. Quite an emotional day, Kim.
Where were the prisoners relocated?
Yeah, good question. They were relocated more or less to the nearest jails to Gloucester, and in a nutshell, that is Bristol. A lot of our prisoners now serve their sentences at Bristol, or jails in the Midlands, as far up into the Midlands as Birmingham. There are some jails in Redditch and Worcestershire. Some of our prisoners are housed there now. But any sort of prisoners today committing crimes in Gloucestershire and being allocated a jail from Gloucestershire would probably go to those jails I've just mentioned. No, we're no longer.
Yeah.
Just Just moving on to an area here. We've just left the vehicle lock, the gate lodge, where I talked to you about our prisoners coming in the vehicles and leaving to go to courts, coming from courts. Before the gate lodge was built, this was their entry and exit, our original gate lodge at Gloucester Prison. I get asked regularly, why is it shut? Why is it not in operation? That's my simple answer to that is size. These gate lodges, Victorian build, not built for a 52-seater coach taking prisoners on transfer to other jails, not built for large skip lorries, not built for the many food produce lorries that come into this prison.
Sure.
300 prisoners, that's 900 meals a day, literally 7 days a week. We were receiving large vehicles into this jail, depositing food produce to the prison's kitchen. And a lovely little story, a few weeks ago on a tour, a gentleman said to me, I can vouch for the size of that gate lodge. And I said, carry on, sir. He said, I was a fireman driving a fire engine in the 1980s to a shouting Gloucester prison. I was a driver, he said, and I got it stuck in your Victorian gate lodge.
No way.
Yeah, he said we had to deflate the tyres to get the fire engine back out of the jail. So
how often are you doing the tours here?
I do tours. Tours are 7 days a week, predominantly and mainly the busy tours are weekends. I do Saturdays, 2 tours, 12 till 2 and 3 till 5 on a Saturday, and a colleague of mine does tours same time on a Sunday also. Saturday seems to be a popular day. We do educational tours in a week.
Lovely. What's this? What have we walked into?
This is the alleyway that separates A and B and C wing. We're just walking alongside B wing now.
This is B wing.
This is B wing. We're going to go in B wing shortly. The red brick build. The red brick build further on down is A wing.
Yeah.
Our original build, A and B wing, and our more recent wing, I believe 1972 it was opened. On the left, the grey brick is C wing. Each wing had many roles over the years, and I'll talk in depth about those a little bit later on. To your immediate left is our education facilities. I have to be honest, quite limited at Gloucester Prison. The
Right.
Victorian jail, we have limited facilities here to occupy.
What was this? This was the educational bit.
The education to your left is this build here, and through this alleyway here is the prison hospital wing. You can go in there later on. And more modern terminology of prison healthcare. Cells are all upstairs, and nursing station downstairs. Doctor's waiting room, doctor's surgery, if I remember.
Can we go and have a look at the jail cells?
We're gonna go in now and have a look at the main court, and have a look at some cells and the landings.
It's quite eerie in here. Apologies if the signal goes, guys.
If you lead on, Kim, and go through the first of the gates.
Here we are.
Okay, we're in the main part of the jail, the original build.
Power on.
To my left is A wing, and to my right is B wing. 3 landings on each wing. A and B wing had many roles over the years. The way I describe its best workings were quite a few years ago when A wing was for convicted prisoners. That's a prisoner who's received a sentence in front of a bench at a magistrate's court or in front of a judge and jury at a Crown Court. He would be located on A wing. Prisoners serving 6 months, 6 years, 6 life sentences. He would be serving a sentence on A wing. A prisoner on remand who's maybe weekly or monthly going to magistrate's court and pleading not guilty, or his case has not yet been formalised, he would come back here and be placed on the remand wing until he goes in front of a magistrate or Crown Court judge and gets given a sentence. So he could leave here on a Tuesday, leave in B wing, the remand wing. He could come back that night in a vehicle through the gate lodge where we saw earlier, and he could be located on A wing because he's now been given a sentence, okay? Had different roles over the years, but at its best, and for many years, A wing was for convicted prisoners, B wing was for remand prisoners. It used to be a terminology a few years ago, innocent till proven guilty. The rights of a remand prisoner were also greater than a convicted prisoner. And the classic example I always give to that is, for a few years ago on A wing, a convicted prisoner was allowed 1 visit a month. On B wing, on remand, he was allowed 3 a week. He was allowed to wear his own clothing, providing he had a spare set of clothing in here. Normally association took place most nights of the week, as opposed to on a 1 in 3 rota when you're convicted. So if there's 2 ways of serving your sentence, trying to serve it on B wing was certainly a lot easier than serving it on A wing. You could spend more money in the prison shop a week than a convicted prisoner, but I think my point about the visits gets it over that B wing was certainly maybe the place to spend as long as you can on. Let's go into A wing, as I said, our convicted wing. We'll walk down the landing, 3 landings. See the staircase in front of you.
Wow.
Prisoners wouldn't be allocated a landing due to the length of sentence or due to the nature of their crimes. We could have burglars on the 1s landing. We're on the 1s, that's the terminology we use. The middle landing is the 2s, and of course up above on the top landing is the 3s.
Can you show us the cell?
Yes, yeah, we can do. Yeah, let's go up to the middle landing. If you can go to the top of the stairs, the first landing, 2's landing.
Thank you.
If you do a left and then a right, so we'll have a look at some cells down here.
To show the people this landing.
Some very special cells here, these last 5, because these are our condemned man cells. Our prisoners 5 days before execution were placed in these cells.
So it's this one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this, for example, is the smaller window for general cellmate.
Yeah.
And then if they're condemned man, you explain that?
Be located in here 5 days before execution, and each day be moved closer to the execution chamber. The rights of the, or probably the only right of the condemned prisoner who's 5 days away from execution, is that he was given a better view from his prison window than the rest of the prison population. Maybe quite barbaric, but those were the times, weren't they? So each day, Kim, our prisoner was moved closer to execution.
What, and they moved up a cell each day?
Yeah, each cell, the hanging officer moved them
Word.
to a cell closer to execution. The morning of execution,
Go on.
6 o'clock in the morning, our prisoner would leave this very cell, for the final time. He would be met just in front of me by one person, the prison chaplain. Normally asked for a confession. Quite often the prison chaplain would end the conversation, not the prisoner. The prisoner was talking for too long. That prisoner then would turn left and walk through an archway here. We can see, and we will see on the tour, where the gallows were. He will walk through an archway here and stand on the gallows and be dropped.
It's horrible.
On my tours, it's always quite a somber moment. But
Absolutely.
we're now going to go across an area called the Bridge, which links A and B where we are now. We're on A wing. We're going to go across and have a look at some cells on C wing. C wing was our new build. As I said earlier, pretty certain 1972 it was opened. C wing had many different roles over the years, but because it's a new build, they're completely different cells to those over here.
Okay. Over there's the recess unit, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the recess. That's the right terminology. You know, the shower block, for want of a better word. They're known in prisons as recesses. One on each landing. There's one above you. You can see there's 2 or 3 showers there. There's 2 or 3 toilet blocks in there. A prisoner could use the shower facilities in the morning when he was unlocked, or if he chose not to, that was his decision, his right. He could use the shower facilities when he was out on association. Out on association was done on a rota basis in this prison. That's when prisoners are playing snooker and pool and watching telly and making phone calls, but they could also use that time to use the shower facilities. Some prisoners maybe wouldn't use the shower in the morning because they knew that night they're out on association and they would have a more leisurely shower that evening as opposed to that morning. Okay, we're just going to walk through, as I said, the bridge. That was its terminology. It linked our 2 Victorian wings, A and B, to C wing. If you lead on, Kim, and I'll open,
sure.
And I'll open the gate.
You have to lock every gate behind you, didn't you?
Yes, we did. Yeah. Never left the gate open. It's I find it quite bizarre, the tours that I've been doing, coming on duty on a Saturday and seeing kids around the jail left open, and I can say, oh, habits die hard. The first thing I do before I start my tours is, guess what? Shut the gates.
Guys, I hope that the signal keeps up throughout this area, but as you can appreciate, it's very thick walls and steel.
Okay, Searing, if you have a look down each landing, Kim, and there's a landing behind you as well.
Ooh.
And we've got 2 landings above us. We've no need to go up there. They're mirrored to these landings. They're exactly the same. I think it's 15 cells that you're looking at now, and 15 that you were looking at a couple of seconds ago.
Yeah.
Obviously 30. And there's 2 more landings above us. Searing had an approximate roll each day, prison roll, the amount of prisoners that were here of 90. Very different cells. They're a new build. But also different for a couple of other reasons, because they were single cell occupancy. I get asked many questions where we just left from, or how many prisoners in a cell? Was it 2 in a cell? On A, where we just come from, mostly 2. On B, where we're going to go to in a minute, mostly 2 again. C wing was single cell occupancy. C wing didn't have toilets in their cells like A and B did. C wing prisoners could use the toilet facilities in what we call patrol state. That's maybe in a staff lunch break or during the night. The prisoners could use the toilet facilities by pressing a 4-digit code in their cells, and providing nobody else was out on the landing, they could come out and use the toilet facilities 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. They would press this 4-digit code, their door would unlock for them, a bit like an American film. In the 1970s, I can tell you, it was a very modern way of a prison's working. When that prisoner's gone back in his cell, he would shut his door and he would press that code again. We'll call it 1, 2, 3, 4 for a nice straightforward example. His door would then lock. The next prisoner who's in the queue to come out and use the recess facilities was able to do so, but he couldn't use those facilities until our first prisoner has gone back into his cell, shut his door and re-locked his door.
Can I go and have a look at a cell?
Yes, come on through. Let's have a look at 3 cells down, Kim.
Go and follow you.
Because I can show you one of these keypads.
That's the bathroom that they could use if, where they put their code in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got just a cell for you if you'd like to go in.
Thanks. Oh, this is tiny. And this would have been where the table was.
Yeah, table and chairs, so there would have been prisoners sat there. There would have been another chair there, and that's where the table came out from. But as I said, single cell occupancy here, just 1 bed, and a prisoner would be located here on his own. But there would be another seat there. It's his choice to sit, maybe looking at the view, or sat there looking out of his window.
How big would you say this cell is?
These are probably about 8 foot by 6 foot, these more modern doors. The doors are not taller over here on Searing, because in Victorian times we weren't such tall people. And many times over the years my taller colleagues, not so much me, have banged their heads locking up prisoners or unlocking, because they're very short door entrances over on A and B. I talked earlier about the locking a cell, or unlocking. It's quite dimly lit.
It's dark in here, I can't see it very well, but yeah, there we are.
But this is the keypad here where a prisoner could press a 4-digit code and lock his cell door and come out and use the facilities. If I'm very honest with you, and I will be, it was quite often open to abuse. Prisoners would come out maybe and walk down the landing and have a chat to a cellmate and not use the facilities at all. But I'll word this very carefully, he was sometimes encouraged to go back behind his door because maybe another prisoner wanted to use the facilities for the correct reasons. Okay, we're gonna...
Do you know how much the lady has asked how much the tours cost? Do you know?
Yeah, I think the guided tours, I believe, are £18. There are concessions. The self-guided tours, I also believe, it's not as much as 20, and I think it's as low as 15 either. I think the self-guided tours, 7 days a week, can amble all around the jail all day long, Kim. I think they're £15 or £16. I seriously believe for £2, maybe £3 extra, come on a guided tour. And when self-guiders turn up on a Saturday, I try and say to them, please park with a couple more pounds. And if you've got 2 hours to spare,
well, yeah, you get your knowledge because you've been you were a prison officer for 25 years.
25 years I did here. Passionate about the jail. I think you've probably already gathered that. And It wasn't due to be open to the public. We don't know how long it is going to be open to the public, and the more people we can get in this jail, we seriously believe the longer, Kim, it may stay open for.
You hope it's going to run till April though, don't you?
Yeah, it's, I believe it's contracted till April. This company that I work for, Jailhouse Tours, currently rent the jail from the owners who were looking, to be blunt, to bulldoze an awful lot of this beautiful building and turn into flats and apartments. I believe there's a stumbling block there, and it may get extended past April, but the bottom line is that the owners of the jail didn't want your eye in here, didn't want members of the public in here. But I think it's great that people have got a chance
People need to know what's been on their doorstep, don't they?
Yeah, and I seriously believe that whether it's Gloucestershire people or people from surrounding counties, there's been tourists, certainly Gloucestershire people are so unaware of the type of prisoners that were housed in this wing, in this jail. And I'll talk about that now briefly before we move on. I get asked many times, Julian, do you ever get any lifers in Gloucester Prison? Julian, do you ever get any sex offenders in Gloucester Prison? Well, C-Wing was built in the 1970s, as I keep saying, I think 1972. It was built, Kim, to house long-term sex offenders, prisoners serving a minimum sentence of 10 years up until life. So there's some prisoners housed in the cells that you and I just walked in, committed some pretty horrendous crimes. In more recent times, in the 80s, we became what's called a lifer unit. I regularly get asked, Julian, do you ever get any lifers in little old Gloucester Prison? My answer to that is, there's been hundreds. 90 single cells where we stood, above us, below us. Yeah. There would have been, on regular occasions, 90 murderers in C-Wing. Those murderers in this lifer unit, when we were, had already served a lengthy sentence, even before they came here, and they were here for what's called en route to open conditions. They may get the luxury of going to what we call an open prison. Gloucestershire people may be familiar with one down towards Bristol called Lay Hill, where the prison wall is about 3 feet tall. Great sports facilities, dormitory living accommodation, get to work out in the public, get to go on courses and better themselves. So if you've got a prisoner who's done 20 years and he gets told to go to Gloucester for 5 years, and you may get open conditions and keep your nose clean, he's going to do that. In more recent times, as I said, each wing's had many roles over the years, but C-Wing in more recent times was a young offenders institution, very challenging times, 17 to 21-year-olds. You're locking up a 17-year-old for the first time in his life, giving him a single cell with very little facilities in Gloucester Prison. That's not because as prison officers we were nasty people, we weren't, we were fair, but there was no great facilities here to occupy our young offenders or even our adults. I'm not going to show you great sports facilities, I'm not going to show you a massive education block, no great big gymnasium. You know, our gymnasium was the size of a postage stamp in relation to our role. Let's go back through A and B wing, and I'm going to take you to the prison chapel.
Oh, that's a crash, isn't it? Sorry.
Well, no, you've done my job for me. As I said, it should be me walking behind you and locking each door as we go through. So this is A wing. We left here just recently to go to C wing, and we're just going to go into the prison chapel. Yeah. Which splits both A and B wing. It's halfway between A and B wing. And if you lead on into the prison chapel.
Here we are. It's really eerie because it hasn't been open for 5 years, isn't it?
No, as is the same with exercise, Kim, you cannot deny a prisoner a right to an hour's chapel service a week. And I have to say that they were observed in a respectful manner on most occasions. Prisoners, we would unlock the gates that we've just walked through 11 o'clock in the morning. We would shout to our prisoners, those that want to use the chapel facilities, come to the Sunday service, please press their cell call bells, which a red light would flash outside their cell. And okay, yeah, it may be a chance for a prisoner to come in here and talk to another prisoner who's located on another wing, but I have to say, overall, our chapel services here were carried out in a respectful manner. I can still see now about 150 blue semicircular chairs facing towards this wall. The raised level here is where the altar used to be. And above our heads is an area we can get up to. Now, staircase that takes us up there. Above our heads, Kim, on the back wall, is where the prison organ was. And a civilian member of the public used to come in on a Sunday and play the organ for the hymns during the Sunday morning chapel services. I remember it was 9 till 10, set in stone. This was a Roman Catholic Mass on a Sunday morning. 10 to 11 was the Church of England service. Always a roll of the Church of England service of about 80. The Roman Catholic Mass was about half that number. We have a multi-faith room here for Muslim prayers. That used to take place in an area where 2 cells are knocked into one on A wing. But in recent years, with the Muslim population on the increase in prisons, they moved to a converted workshop at the end of A wing. A lot of people on social media, most of signing out there, taking pictures down of the cross, all the cross up above our heads there. The office underneath the cross was the prison chaplain's office. I'll level with you, I'm not particularly a religious man, but I'm very in favour of the role that the prison chaplain plays. A lot of prisoners have a little bit of an issue. There's still this macho image in jail. Prisoners have a lot of issues about talking to prison officers about problems they may have in their domestic life, but they find it easier talking to a neutral body. It's our job as prison officers to reduce the acts of self-harm, which sadly are on the increase, or even worse, suicide, that has happened to me in this jail. I've found suicides in this jail. Those days will live with me forever. So a neutral body coming into our prisons and maybe assist prison officers in reducing those acts is a welcome neutral body. Prison chaplain also has the unpleasant task of letting a prisoner know about the death of an next of kin. We're a population, a roll, we call it, we're a roll of 300. That can be from 17 to 100 years of age. So it is something that we are doing, sadly, on a regular basis. The way that would work for the prison chaplain, we'd speak to the wing staff of where that prisoner is, and we would get together with the prison chaplain, and it may be decided in best interest that we as prison officers let that prisoner know about the death of the next of kin. It may be a prisoner I've known for many years. The chaplain's just about to meet him for the first time, and it's a role that I've carried out, sadly, on many occasions. I suggest we'll make our way to B-Wing. I talked earlier about A-Wing being for convicted prisoners over the years, so many different roles.
Okay.
B-Wing for many years was our remand wing. Our prisoners not yet received a sentence.
There we are. Sorry, just having a nosy in a cell.
Yeah, no, they're all more or less the same bunk beds in here, and you can see the table and chairs now. I don't know in the cells that we've had a look at whether they have tables and chairs in there. You can see fixed to the floor.
Okay.
Fixed to the floor in recent years because in prisons we have had incidents, cell barricades. Perhaps the prisoner's not wanted to come out of his cell.
Sure.
Perhaps, we've said to a prisoner, well, next Tuesday you're going to Dartmoor prison. And he doesn't want to go because his family live in Cheltenham or Gloucester. And come next Tuesday, that prisoner's barricaded himself in his cell.
Did you have that?
Yeah, and I'll talk about that in a second a bit more, but we've got measures in place in recent times to prevent that happening, and we've got a wonderful facility.
Fixing stuff to the floor.
Yeah. If a prisoner put a bunk bed up against the door, table and chairs, it takes some getting in there if we've got to get in there, and we have had situations worse than that, the prisoner refusing to go on transfer. There's been some hostage situations. Prisoners have taken fellow prisoners hostage and barricaded in their cells for whatever reason. It has been in England. I'm not going to say Gloucester prison because it hasn't happened in Gloucester prison. There has been cell murders, but we certainly on occasions need to get in those cells very quickly. Now you and I talked earlier, Kim, about a delicate issue on my tour, and I feel strongly about this. I do get asked, and I did worry myself the night before my first tour, I do get asked the Fred West question.
Yes, that's been asked on Facebook Live, yeah.
I have strong views. Fred West has caused a lot of heartache and misery and carnage in this county and surrounding counties, but I do also respect that some of my tour party may want to know where he was located, because Fred West did serve a sentence, a short time in Gloucester prison on remand.
Yeah.
He actually spent most of his time in the police cells, but he was located on this wing, and his cell was B3, cell 18. At this point, I always say to my tour party that I'm now going to move on to the next part of the tour. If they want to take pictures of that cell, they're more than welcome to. I'm not actually watching them take pictures of it. As I said, I think I've got my point over. I've got strong views on Fred West and, of course, the crimes he committed.
Where are we going now?
We're going to leave B wing. We've seen A wing, our convicted wing. We've seen B wing, our remand wing. We've had a look at C wing.
Oh, we're going down to the horrible one now, aren't we?
No, we're going down. We're going down to quite a vulnerable area now, and vulnerable being a word. Right up until closure, the area we're going to is where our prisoners, classed as VPs, vulnerable prisoners, were housed. Those are prisoners who, due to the nature of their offences, have been asked to be segregated from the rest of the prison population. Okay, a few years ago, 20, maybe 30 years ago, that prison ruling was called Prison Rule 43. Today, it is called Rule 45, but it still has the same meaning. A prisoner will come in from the courts. He may be advised by his barrister or solicitor due to the nature of his offences, and I'm going to say it, sex offenders, due to the nature of his offences, he may be advised to be segregated from the rest of the prison population. There's still this contract out there in prisons for the rest of the prison population, maybe to get at these prisoners because of the nature of the offences they've committed, maim them, throw hot water at them, urine, fight with them, cut them. So they would be housed down here. And this was right up until closure in 2013.
Can I have a look in one of the cells?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. One here.
So this would be a one-person only cell?
No, this to your right. You can see the fixtures on the floor of where the bunk bed would be. Some of the cells have still got beds in, some haven't. But we would come on duty here. We would work down here very much in a different way from the rest of the prison. And the best way, the most simple way of describing that, so sink and toilet in here. The best way I describe that, Kim, is we worked down here a prison within a prison.
Right.
They collected their breakfast meal before the rest of the prison population.
Okay.
Whilst the rest of the prison population were collecting their lunchtime meal, our vulnerable prisoners, our VPs, were out on exercise.
So you literally kept them very separate.
Prisoners who were housed down here sometimes were fearful of their safety leaving here. So many prisoners, depending on the length of the sentence, literally did not leave here. The only time they left here was to go and collect their meals. This used to be petitioned off because otherwise, as I said, prisoners from B wing above us, the stairs we just walked down, would look to get to these prisoners. It was a very volatile area. It was very noisy. Each of the meal times, our prisoners from above us would come down and shout obscenities through the bars. Beast, nonce, monster, sex case, all these terminologies, and of course at floor level, maybe throw urine underneath or hot water, or try and get at these prisoners. They didn't, to be honest. They didn't get at them. We're a professional body. We work down here to keep these prisoners separated from the rest of the population. This is where I'm housed down here. In the right-hand corner is a gateway that leads straight out onto the prison exercise yard, so our prisoners did not have to walk out with the rest of the prison population.
Research unit.
So that's where they exited and entered from the prison exercise yard. What I always do at this point on my tours is say to my guides that we wouldn't be a prison without doors, and I'd like you to have a look at these three doors, because these are three of the original hung prison doors. I believe due to Heritage Trust that we had to keep a small population of the original doors hung. And on the threes landing on both A and B, when we haven't been up onto the threes on this tour, but on the threes and the twos landing, certainly on the threes landing, sorry, most of those doors are the original doors, and we kept a token offering splattering of these doors down here. I regularly get asked, well, why were they replaced? Well, sometimes due to major incidents, we had to get in these cell doors quite quickly, and these old original doors, we couldn't do that.
Right.
We would use the terminology de-escalate. We would try and de-escalate an incident, maybe a hostage situation, maybe a barricade. Our prisoner doesn't want to go to Dartmoor, he's not having a very good day. We would talk to him, basically. But after all the talking's been done, we've got to go in there and try and get him, okay? And get him out of that cell, certainly in the event of a hostage situation. So in the 1970s and 80s, we had a mechanism called a door jack, which works very much like your car jack at home, a hydraulic bit of kit that lifts the car off the ground so you can take the tar off. Well, that hydraulic kit would force this door off its hinges, okay? So
wow.
We could get in there, but sadly, it took about an hour to do. I remember it was extremely noisy. It was deemed a major incident, so the whole prison population would be locked up while this took place.
Right.
But now, we've got some very modern doors that prevents us from doing that, because if you just come back to this door here, I remember the hostage incident in here, I'm just going to open this door and bang it, okay? So let's do that. I'm going to do the same with this door. This is our new door, 1994, I think that's how new they were. But, so I'll open this door, shut this door. So
that's a slam.
We slammed, so we both agreed, our door's open, our door's shut, and that's as far as they go. But that's, you're nodding your head at me, but that's actually wrong. Because now, when we have a major incident, an in-cell major incident, it's still deemed a major incident, we still lock the rest of the prison population up, we still have a negotiator try and de-escalate the situation, but we don't talk anymore for too long, because we do this. We're armed with a screwdriver, we take 3 screws out of a bar there, Kim, and we do this.
Ah, very good.
It's a door that opens both ways. All jails now, certainly all the new builds in the last 20 years plus, I'm guessing, are fitted with these doors. Obvious reasons, called anti-barricade doors.
Right, okay.
Okay, B1 landing, we're just leaving the main part of B1 landing, our segregation area for our vulnerable prisoners. I'm guessing down here in recent years, 80–90% of those were here because of the nature of their crimes. The last sort of 10–15% were perhaps prisoners who got what we call into debt, drug debts around the jail, prisoners who owe, can't pay back, prisoners are fearful for their safety, because maybe burgled a fellow prisoner's house, and they think, dear me, I need to be segregated, I fear for my safety, sure. And those prisoners would be housed down here. That could be burglars, drink drivers, but they would be housed down here and work the same regime as the rest of the population down here, okay? It was, in old-fashioned terms, it was a last resort. You really feared for your safety if you asked to be housed down here, if your offences weren't of a sex offence nature. Favourite part of the jail for me, come on through. Every jail has one. We have a small jail, so this is a small area. This is our segregation unit.
Yeah.
Many nicknames over the years: chokey, block, hole, solitary confinement is another terminology. And this is quite a volatile area to be working in. I'll level with you, we could go many days or weeks without too many prisoners being housed in this area, but this is where Gloucester Prison's unruly prisoners would be housed. That could be a bully. Nobody likes a bully. No. If we detected bullying going on around the wings, we would take that prisoner out of circulation and he would be housed down here. He wouldn't come into contact with any other prisoners. He wouldn't go down and collect his 3 meals a day. It would be brought to him. If he went out and exercised, don't forget he's entitled to an hour's exercise, he went out on his own.
Right, okay.
He didn't exercise the rest of the prison population, so solitary confinement is an old-fashioned word, but it still has a ring today because it was very solitary. But two very special cells down here. A cell here called a constant watch cell. Its correct terminology is a safe cell. It's a safe cell, Kim, because it's got fixed furniture. It's a fixed bed, fixed toilet and sink area. A prisoner would be housed in there who was at high risk of suicide. In recent years, we would quite often have a prisoner sat opposite this cell, constantly, as it says, watching this prisoner. Okay, it was quite often a prisoner who had committed a very recent crime, and the police had brought him to the prison and said we believe he's at high risk of suicide, you know, and he would be housed in here. If I'm very honest, and I will be, they were normally only housed in here for a couple of days. It was sometimes their choice. I've got a brother up on B Wing Boss, and I've got a cousin on A Wing. Can I go in a cell with them? And we would encourage that, okay? I remember there used to be perspex on this outer gate here, because sometimes this prisoner didn't want us here, so you know, he may throw hot water at us or urine or spit at us. He didn't want us here. Maybe he wanted to commit an act of self-harm. They would have limited facilities during the day, maybe a book, sometimes not even a radio. You can do a lot of self-harm with a radio. But as I said, our prisoners were not housed in here for too long. We would try and encourage them to integrate with the rest of the prison population. In my opinion, Gloucester Prison, my favourite cell in the jail. This is, you can see the words there, padded cell. I can remember it was a padded cell. That was in the, I believe, outlawed in the 1980s. This is for our most unruly prisoner. And once again, we could go months without somebody coming in here, but if a prisoner was housed in here, it was because he was an extremely violent nature, okay? And that could be a prisoner who's got involved in a dispute on one of the wings we've just walked down from. Maybe a fight's taken place, an alarm bell situation, prison officers have run to resolve the situation. If one or two, normally only one, of those prisoners remain violent when the prison staff arrive, he would be placed what we call under restraint, and he would be housed in one of the cells down here. But if he was extremely violent, it may be deemed that he'd be housed in this cell here. And the way I describe this, it's a cell within a cell. It's called the padded cell, which it still was. Might have been a soft landing for me on a few occasions. Its terminology, modern terminology, is the box. Okay, there's very little in there. It's a cell within a cell, but our prisoner would be housed in here, an outer skin, Victorian soundproofing we'll call that.
There's nothing in here, is there?
No, absolutely.
There's a window.
There's a window, of course, you can't open. All there is in here is heating.
Literally nothing.
But this was our box reserved for our most violent prisoner. As I said earlier, you know, we could go weeks or months without a prisoner being housed in here.
So it would be two of you in there, wouldn't it? And then how do you exit when you've left the prisoner?
We're trained. All prison officers are trained in self-defence techniques. Those that work down here are more highly qualified than our colleagues on the wing. But the staff that work down here were trained in techniques to leave that cell, to take steps to leave that cell. I always say the line, the steps I took were very quick ones. So we've left our prisoner in there, he's having a bad day, so we'll let him kick the door and shout obscenities and scream. He can do all that. As I said, this is the more recent Victorian soundproofing, this is door here. So we would shut that door there and go about the rest of our duties. The rest of our cells could be maybe prisoners who committed acts of indiscipline around the jail, maybe a fighter from a couple of days ago, as I touched on it earlier, bullies, or sometimes we would house prisoners from other jails to give those prisoners a break from its staff. Prisons have rules, of course, and prisoners who have broken those rules will be brought into this room and would stand in front of the governor, and a charge will be read to them for the prison rules that they've broken. That is called adjudications, okay? Now, a prisoner may smash his telly, he may shout obscenities at an officer, he may damage prison property, he may refuse to go to work. It was like an in-cell court case, best described. Still happening today in every jail in the land, prison adjudications. So that prisoner, the morning of adjudications, would be escorted down here to the block, placed in the cell alongside this area here called the holding cell, and one by one the prisoner would come in here and be addressed by the governor, who would sit at a desk here. We as prison officers would man this area here, and there would be an officer to the governor's left that would read out the charge. As I said, shouting obscenities, refusing to go to work. Prisons have rules, and if prisoners break rules, they are placed in front of the governor to ask for a plea. If found guilty, sometimes there'll be a plea of guilty. Maybe that a few years ago, the prisoner would lose what's called remission. That's the time off for good behaviour. Today, in more recent times, maybe the governor may say, 3 days cellular confinement, terminology 3 days CC. That means 3 evenings where he can't come out on association, or maybe the prisoner would take, the prison government would take some money off the prisoner, not literally, reduce the amount he can spend in the prison shop, you know, on the next weekly visit he makes to that shop. So this is where the in-cell court cases took place, known as adjudications.
Should I go first?
Just go through, because I have to shut the gates behind you.
You do.
So just leaving B-Wing, just walking towards the busiest part of the jail, which we were at sort of 20 minutes ago. This area is called the centre, because this is where all the throughfare took place at both A and B Wing. We were here earlier on this tour, but all prisoner movement took place through this very area here. This is where our prisoners filed down, a landing at a time, to collect their breakfast, lunch or evening meal. This is where our prisoners filed down to go to the workshop, the library, the education block, to see the prison chaplain, to go to the reception area, maybe if a prisoner wanted to change their clothes. All prisoner movement happened through this area here called the centre. This was like the hub, should we say. A few years ago it was manned by the highest ranking uniform called a principal officer. He would have 4 or 5 basic grade officers here, and this was the hub of the jail here. This is an area where we would collect the prison roll. We count our prisoners 3 times a day, and there's an office just through here. Each of the 3 meal times we would come down and submit the prison roll from B wing that you're looking at now, and to my right A wing, and across the way C wing. So this was the prison hub. I talked earlier about prisoners collecting their breakfast meal or their lunch or evening meal. That would take place down here. This was the kitchen passage.
Where's doors?
Prisoners, the original doors. Our prisoners would come down here, a landing at a time. We would not allow all of our prisoners just to come down at their leisure and collect their breakfast meal. We had a terminology called controlled unlocking. We controlled the unlocking when there was large numbers that you needed to deal with in a short space of time. And the breakfast meal would probably take about 3/4 of an hour to feed all of our 3 wings, A, B and C, we've just come from. So our prisoners would come down here, collect a metal meal tray. I remember an area here where they cut the tray, and they would file through this area here. The kitchen servery, for your more senior viewers, a bit like a school. This is called the hot plate. If you stay there and I'll man the hot plate, there would be a hot plate here. Prisoners would be serving prison porridge. My favourite meal in prison.
What, they come in through this door and then they get
come here, a landing at a time, and would file down, walk with me, collect on this occasion a breakfast meal here, and would exit through the door there and go back to their cells. This was manned by kitchen catering staff in here, but it would be prisoners who would serve fellow prisoners their food. The kitchen area.
Can I have a look?
Come through here, by all means, the dimly lit area, but there's
dark in here.
Still a lot more here than what I thought was going to be here.
That.
But a massive cookers, I remember here. This is where our 3 meals a day. It's 900 meals a day. We were an average roll each day of about 300 prisoners, and this is where the meals were cooked.
What, this was all the cookers, was it?
Yeah, this is all the cookers here, all the metal that you see, all the cookers were attached to that area, and there's various sort of storage areas, and fridge freezers.
Oh, yeah.
As I said earlier, literally 7 days a week, we were receiving HGV lorries with food produce, 900 meals a day.
That is a lot, isn't it?
Okay, we're going to leave A and B wing.
Awesome.
And we're going to go across to the prison hospital. The more recent terminology is healthcare.
Sure.
I keep referring to older terminology, Kim, but as I said, it is 25 years service you're looking at.
Brilliant.
Thank you for shutting the gate. You've got the door. Oh. Can you do a left to walk with me?
Sure. Oh, we're going through there now.
Yeah, we're going to go through, we walked down here earlier. There's the alleyway that separates A and B way.
There's a step there. Oh dear.
So if you walk through here, now at this point, when I've got my tour party with me, I'll talk about the prison healthcare. A lot of prisoners in there have mental health issues. Sometimes it's like an overflow of the punishment block. But what I also talk about, and some of my tours doesn't stem right back in history. A lot of my tour is about the workings of the jail, how it worked for the 25 years that I was here. Yeah. But I do encourage people to look at this area here. This is known as Debtors Walk. There's entries, etchings in the brickwork here from many years ago. Okay, we believe that years ago prisoners had access to this area here, not under supervision. In more recent times, well, my 25 years here, any prisoner walking past Debtors Walk was under escort. The supervisor had a prison officer with him, but there are several references to prisoners of many years ago. I think it's 1849 written there. On a slightly humorous note, maybe, there is a couple of more recent references. I see a reference to 2015, but rest assured I know the person's name, and that's a prison officer, not a prisoner. But
Can I go over here?
Yeah, by all means have a look around. But this is Debtors Walk, and as I say, we believe that it would have taken some. If you have a look at this, I don't know whether this is every day of a prisoner's sentence, and this brickwork here,
like a tally chart in a cartoon.
But there's several pinprick holes in the brickwork here, but we're sure that prisoners had access to this area not under supervision. It's quite a busy area in my time here, because this building here was Gloucester Prison's Education block. It doesn't form part of the tour, there's not a lot to see in there. It was actually limited education facilities for the prison population. It could take about 30 prisoners each day, but that wasn't 30 different prisoners, that was 30 prisoners who may be doing a 4 or 5 week course. I had some situations where a prisoner would say to me, "Mr. Brunt, can you help me with my reading and writing?" And I say, "I'll ring the education block for you." And I ring the education block, and they may say, "We have a space, but it's not for 3 or 4 weeks' time." Well, that's not going to help my prisoner who wants to better himself from today. You know, we had limited facilities here, being a Victorian build. The more recent builds, they call them super jails. I don't quite know what's super about a jail. Are much bigger than Gloucester Prison, which is one of the reasons Gloucester Prison was shut. I make reference to a jail in Wrexham, a recent build. It unlocks 1,500 prisoners every morning. We unlock 300. You know, that would have, in that super jail, that would have super facilities. Come on through with me. As I said, that's Debtors Walk. This is the prison healthcare.
Okay, thank you. Cool.
Not a great deal to see downstairs, so we will walk downstairs, but our prisoners over here were housed upstairs. Downstairs is like a nursing station, a doctor's surgery, a waiting room. Yep. Prisoners could request daily to see the prison doctor. The prison doctor would attend daily. If he did not attend at a weekend, he would be on call, and our healthcare nurses have 24-hour access to the prison doctor should they need to speak to him. Rest assured, the step of stairs not for staff.
Oh.
This had a refit, I'm guessing, about 20 years ago. These cells are every single cell is what we call a safe cell. So the concrete bed base, the concrete sink. A lot of prisoners housed over here, as I said earlier, mental health issues. I talked earlier also about a prisoner at high risk of suicide who maybe wanted to throw urine or hot water at us, and there used to be a perspex, but you can see here, this is one such cell. Mostly single cell occupancy, as I said, as you can see the bed base. Of course, our prisoners have mattresses. Sometimes we take the mattress out of the cell during the day, but once again, they had limited facilities in there. Maybe a prisoner at risk of suicide who has been removed from a safe cell maybe located in here. This was, I suppose, want of a better word, a dormitory. I can remember there was probably three beds up against this back wall here, facing the windows, and this is where we would encourage our prisoners at high risk to integrate. Safe cells, very little harm they can do to themselves. No access, thankfully, to the cell baths. But it was like a progression. Prisoner at high risk of suicide. We would try and get him to integrate. He's only going to be as good as us. And if he said, "Yeah, I need a bit of help, I need a bit of company," we would speak to the prison healthcare and maybe get him housed over here. We've come up one set of steps. We're going to go down a dimly lit area and have a look downstairs where our prison healthcare staff operated from.
This place is vast.
Yeah, it is. I always say.
Well, it is really dark.
Certainly Gloucestershire people came like to me, and a lot of people on my tours have said it are so unaware of the size of the ground. But whilst it's vast, we as prison staff said that we have limited facilities here to occupy our prisoners. Remember, that was a waiting room in there where prisoners, it says there, healthcare waiting room, where our prisoners would wait to see the prison doctor. This is a nursing station in here.
Okay.
And I note in this room here maybe medical records. Maybe medical records may be kept in this area here. Right. But strictly speaking, prisoners are not located down here. This is where the staff worked from, and there's an exercise yard. We'll go out to the exercise yard through the blue door there with the wood across it, but we'll go round alongside Debtors' Wall and have a look at the healthcare exercise yard. Quite often our prisoners housed over here, I talked earlier about an hour's exercise was the entitlement.
Yep.
But quite often it's good therapy to let our prisoners on the healthcare come out on the exercise yard for much longer than that. And the healthcare staff encouraged that, and I for one certainly didn't have a problem with it at all. This is our prison healthcare exercise yard. This is the gate we saw from the other side just a minute or so ago. 4 years of that being stuck. I'm not going to move that. But I remember like a bench sat here, like a park bench. Prisoners could sit. Yeah, this is where our healthcare prisoners had their hourly exercise, or should we say at least their hourly exercise.
Right, Julian, I think I'm going to have to wrap it up now there.
Okay.
Anything you want to say to the public about the tours?
Yeah, very much so. I'm delighted that jailhouse tours, for as long as it lasts, are in Gloucester Prison. It wasn't the idea that members of the public were going to see this great building, but for as long as we're open, and we don't know how long we're going to be open, I want to see you. I encourage you to come and see this great building and the workings of it.
And there's a lot more to see than what we've just seen on the tour, isn't there?
Absolutely. I always joke at the start of my tour, Kim, my tour will last 2 hours. I can make it last 3, and I think every single one is overrun since the last April.